Well, what's happened with postseason football in the last few years? Everybody's got a different agenda right now. You either have hopes for a national championship, or you just got knocked out, or you're trying to set yourself up for 2025, or you're playing some kind of bowl game that you're trying to figure out whether people care about or not. There's all sorts of objectives out there in different situations. But here we are talking Florida State football as we do each and every week. Glad you could join us. This is the reason, folks. You subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because here we are. Of course, Wednesday was New Year's Day, but our guy George has made amends and, of course, has adjusted his schedule. So, George, we thank you for that. So here we are on Thursday, January 2nd, for our first edition of 2025 FSU Live. George, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Man, Happy New Year. Prayers to everybody out there in New Orleans, Las Vegas, New York, with everything going on out in the country. But pleased and blessed to be here talking college football with you the day after New Year. Or is it, what's today, the 2nd? Or today's the 1st? Today's the 2nd, ain't it?
Yes.
So, yeah, this is the day after New Year's. If there's one thing I've learned from you, Mark, and doing this stuff, it's consistency. So that with Christmas being last week, we couldn't let it stand. We had to come out here and give an update. We're here and exciting stuff to talk about FSU football. 8 to 10 guys possibly going to be on campus, several of them already on campus. So very big. Florida State continues the momentum on the trail. And as you mentioned, the college football playoff, maybe after we run through these guys, I can crap on Kirk Herbstreit a little bit and the subjective narratives and this guy didn't deserve it and we need 4 or 5 this from this conference. They're pretty much roasted at this point. I think deserving over best teams has won out thus far by a landslide, and we can get into that in a little bit. But wherever you want to start, man.
Well, we want to start with Florida State because, as you can imagine, I talk about all that other stuff like 23 hours a day. So I will let you go on that one. But in terms of Florida State, you mentioned the name Squirrel White to me before we started to record, and he's been a productive player at Tennessee for the last few years. Experienced guy that knows what he's doing and would certainly be an excellent addition. So we can start there.
Yeah, no doubt. This is the one we had been talking about. Actually, Jen, she's up in Memphis, Tennessee, so she has a really good inside line on players and stuff from that area. She had mentioned it. He wasn't even in my mind. Like, I knew him, but she's mentioned Squirrel, and I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. And after the show, I go look, oh yeah, this guy's a beast. And sure enough, he shows up on campus. A bit of a surprise for some people this morning, even though we had mentioned it on the show previously. 5'10", 175 pounds. This year, he only had 31 receptions, 381 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think that's probably a part of him leaving. I think the idea of what he was going to be in the offense and how good Nico is going to be and all that maybe didn't go quite to his plans this year. Who knows exactly what all's going on up there, but he's highly sought after. He's one of those guys like we talked about with Deuce Robinson, although he's a different type of player, more of that gadget player, could maybe be an Ontario McCaleb from back in the day in Gus Malzahn's offense. He's a guy that has the production and the potential all right there. So would be really, really excited to see him have his senior year in Tallahassee, but everybody's after him. He's got 4 or 5 teams really hard after him. If they could lock this one in down, it would be really, really big for Florida State. And, to go along with Jalen Lucas, some of the young guys, Micah Hydanzi, Dwayne McCoy, et cetera, that they've got, man, this is somebody that you could plug and play and feel like he's probably your best receiver at that position if you can get him in the class. And that's kind of what I was the similarity to Deuce Robinson. If you could go into the season and you got Squirrel White playing some slot, Deuce Robinson out wide, then all of a sudden you can really work similar to the offensive line in the different positions that they've brought in a ton of guys. Let some of these younger guys get their feet wet and be put into the game, spoon-fed so they can develop, instead of, last year where you're forced to put all these true freshmen in that aren't quite ready. And that can really hurt players' development. And this goes into horse training. My mom's an amazing horse trainer, one of the best in the world. You can blow horses up by sending them out and do a big rodeo event too early. Well, it's the same thing with athletes. Like, if you're not ready for it and you get out there, it's just it's just one of these things. You see it with quarterbacks all the time in the NFL. You take a first-round quarterback and throw him right out there behind a bad offensive line, and it hampers their career. In recent years, we've seen some guys like Sam Darnold, 5-6 years later, be able to come into their own. But the Aaron Rodgers method is the best method. If you can sit and get better, not everybody's Lamar Jackson. So if you get Squirrel White in here, it would be great. So big time guy, and he's on campus as we speak. So Florida State fans definitely look out for that one. If we can get him to commit, I'll be hyped for sure.
Georgitis, the Renegade Report. Get on over there. Check out George's work with the transfer portal humming and prospects all over the place. Check out George's work. We will get you days and times. We might as well get that out of the way right now, George. When are you going live next? What the schedule look like?
So we will be live tomorrow at 7 Eastern, hopefully with some commits to talk about, and we'll get into those after I pay the bills here real quick. But it's Tuesdays and Fridays, 7 Eastern. That's our consistency, just like Wednesday, 6 Eastern normally here. Every Tuesday, every Friday, 7 Eastern. We make sure that happens. We also have Monday at 8:30 Eastern, a little different than what me and Mark do. Jen and Tiny have a show called the Renegade Roast. If you're into just all of college football getting roasted, kind of from an FSU perspective, it's an absolute hoot, and it's a lot of fun, but not safe for work, not for the kids to watch. But yeah, that's Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. We're really consistent. And boy, the FSU fan base is back in full force. Maybe not full force, I'd say about 75%. We beat Alabama, you'll see them in full force, but we finally hit 3,000 subscribers, which was a monster goal for us. When I first started doing this, I believe this channel was around 3,000. Chris was around 3,000. James Coleman was around 3,000. A lot of people I look up to. Seems like a point of demarcation on YouTube when 3,000 to me anyway. So we really appreciate everybody here at the Voice of College Football for coming and watching and supporting. And if you're not already subscribed, get over there and do it. It's free. If you're watching right now, half of you guys that are watching aren't subscribed. Okay. The stats run cold across YouTube. It's 50-50. And it's free. Just hit the subscribe button and let's get this channel to 6,000 and on to the next goal.
Perfect. Man, this guy's a pitch man.
I'm a morning guy. I'm a morning guy, Mark. A lot of changes in my life, so I'm all with it right now. We're locked in and all in on this college football thing with no external factors.
Sweet. Love it. Well, you have been here for me, and so I appreciate what you've done. All right, George, on to the next prospect. It was right about the time that we came on live that I was just starting to do my research I do my best to try to supplement your vast knowledge with just a little bit of information here and there. But man, my Thursday has suddenly become Sugar Bowl, Gator Bowl, and like a bunch of other stuff. And I'm got a transfer portal update coming up with Leanne Herring at noon Eastern. So I got to tell you, I got nothing for you today. It's all you, brother.
Hey, that's just fine, man. If I had to try and cover 30 teams, I might have one little note for each team. So I couldn't imagine. And actually, she just got a follow from me. So yeah, check out, if you're an Ole Miss fan, check out that channel as well. The director of recruiting over there, I forget the site. But yeah, definitely very knowledgeable.
Yep.
The next guy, I guess, we'll put on the list. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but he finally got on campus. Thought he was going to be here yesterday. He might have snuck in yesterday, but he's officially, got with the photo gallery, getting on campus is Rasul Faison, one of the top running backs left in the portal. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. In 2024, he had 198 carries, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns for 5 yards per carry. Also had 22 receptions and 99 yards coming out of Utah State. He's had a heck of a road in college football, just one of these gritty college football players. When you look at Florida State's running back room, there's a ton of young talent with Cam Davis, Usman Chroma coming in, who I think is probably the most talented back in the entire room. I mentioned Jalen Lucas, who's a running back, but more of that scat back type player. Micah Hydanzi, similar thing. I'd like to see them working in the slot a lot more. To me, he just fits that Michael Dyer, 5 foot, nothing, 200-pound bowling ball for Gus Malzahn's offense. If you could get him in here, who knows? In a perfect world, maybe he gets beat out by Chroma or Cam Davis throughout the season. But as far as where this team was last year with the effort and everything going wrong and all the turmoil with the coaching staff, I think this guy would be a perfect culture guy to come in and kind of be a leader for that room, provide a floor for that room, and hit the holes that are there. Kind of a mixed bag, as I mentioned. James and even some of the people maybe not quite as excited. They think we got more in there. Would like to see the high school guys get their due. And, I've been the biggest critic of Mike Norvell and his running back rotation. I wish he would just, on a drive at least, stick with a guy for that drive. I mean, people call me Lawrence Toafili's agent because of how he was used this year and putting Cam in as a true freshman every time he got to the red zone and things of that nature. But this is a guy that I think could possibly be that, at least for the beginning of the season. So I think this would really, really raise the floor of the program. Super excited. Again, a lot of people are after him. I believe he's headed to Georgia next. So we'll see what we can do, see if they can get him locked in before he leaves. And you only see 2 years of stats there because he was JUCO and somewhere else. I believe his first couple years in college. That's kind of what I meant when I was talking about his kind of tough, run through college football. But he only has 1 year available.
So this is a great point that you bring up, George. When you bring in somebody like this, most likely, unless he got buried because of maybe off-field incidents or something like that, most likely coming from Utah State, yeah, there is a limited ceiling there. However, he obviously has shown in a full season that he's going to show up, that he's going to carry the mail, that he's going to hit the holes that are provided by the blocking and by the play. He obviously was extremely productive. So that this guy is going to show up and deliver at a productive rate. He may not wow anyone, may not turn heads, may not be the explosive guy that you want or the guy that's got the high ceiling, but at the very least, he's going to show a running back room. This is how you do it in regards to showing up every day for practice, being a guy that's going to be consistent, going to endure through 200 carries, and going to show up and deliver.
Yeah, beautifully said, man. That's my sentiments exactly. As I said, the fan base is kind of split on it. But for me, I think he would be a perfect pickup. So we'll hopefully can get him in. And I know they've been really high on him. They've really worked. And in the transfer portal business, the first visit is the most important visit. I'm pretty sure we got his first visit, so we'll see how it turns out. And there's, we won't spend all day. There's a ton of guys, but yeah, they've really been after it in the portal. We can kind of go down through the list if you want. Most of the names are already kind of known besides him, but Caleb Levale, or I can't never say his name, Lavale, he's a redshirt sophomore from North Carolina, earned his first start in the bowl game against Connecticut, and had everybody fired up. He had basically no stats during the season, but whatever you think about that UNC staff that got fired, he ends up getting the start and looks like the best player on the field, minus Omarion Hampton. I don't even know if he played in the bowl game, but on defense, he was the best player. He was all over, looking like a little mini Luke Kuechly, with like 9 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. Crystal ball by multiple sources, Pete Nakos, some of the 247 guys, myself, predicted him in. Wouldn't be surprised to see him commit today or tomorrow. He was on campus yesterday. I imagine he'll probably be on campus today as well. But to put him with Omar Graham Jr. and the 2 younger linebackers that are his age, and Juice Cryer and Blake Nicholson, all of a sudden you have a really nice core there and something to build on at linebacker. And he's one of these guys, as James Coleman likes to say, a cold A pilgrim is what he calls it. So we love to have him, and it goes kind of against the production thing that we've really pushed for this class, but you've already got Stephon Thompson, you've got Omar Graham coming back. This is one of these guys that I'll bet on the potential and will just be a good get for that room. And just to touch on that for a minute, back to what you were saying about Utah State and kind of the production versus the potential. I've talked about this a lot, but I think these, especially 247 portal rankings, I think they've got them just jacked up. I don't think they're anywhere near what they should be, especially when these teams are looking for portal guys. When you look at a guy like Luke Kromenhoek, comes out and he's number 2 in front of Caden Salter, Dan Peer, all these all-conference level starting quarterbacks, and some even in the P4, and you've got a redshirt freshman that got sacked on a quarter of his dropbacks. Yeah, Luke's got talent. I really liked him. I wanted him to stay, but not to harp on Luke, but it's just a perfect example. The potential versus the production in those rankings is insane. And Florida State learned that lesson hard last year. They signed 10 blue chip transfers, but no production. They were all, 4 and 5 stars out of high school with a bunch of potential. Oh, well, we couldn't get on the field for this, or, they were the third wide receiver, showed some flashes here. Florida State, all about production in this. And I think if you look across the board, it's bared out. It's bared fruit. You get a Braden Fisk from a lower school, he dominates. Look what he's doing in the NFL. If you watch that Texas game, who was their top receiver? A dude from Houston. And it's across the board. Arizona State signed 30 transfers. And go look at that class. They didn't sign a bunch of 4 and 5 star top 10 guys in the portal. I don't know what their reasoning on it is. Maybe to put weight towards what they graded a guy in high school. But if you come in as a true freshman, the way high school recruiting works now, you're only going to keep half of that class at most after a couple of years. And the ones that are going to stay are the ones that are those real ballers that they hit on their evaluations and they get on the field and produce early. So 99% of these guys that leave, they could end up being great players, but you're not counting on them to come in and play. You're pretty much just taking a high school guy at that point, and that's how I look at Luke and a lot of these guys. So Lavale's a bit of an exception. He fits that, it'd be a fair criticism of them of taking him, but I think he's shown enough and will be a good addition to that room. And as we get into the rest of these guys, you'll see that theme continue with production. And Miami went that route this year. We saw how it played out for them. We went that route in 22 and 23. We saw how it played out for us. Really excited about what they got going on, and the next names on the list for sure.
Well, you bring up a great point, and we've had the discussion, you and I, a number of times in evaluating the recruiting rankings, and that it's outdated. There's still a small portion of it that makes sense, obviously, and probably the more elite programs probably still makes more sense, and then it starts to filter down from there. But man, about 70 or 80% of what we always held true to regarding how we viewed roster acquisition and development is out the door. And I have yet to see anybody really put together a system that evaluates it correctly. And it's going to take maybe a little bit of time, but somebody needs to get to work on that, because I would love to see some metrics really play out and some evaluation of the first 3 to 4 years of this transfer portal and how it's played out.
And the biggest part, what I focus in on is just that potential versus production in the portal. High school is 100% potential. We all know that. They get 0 snaps. So these transfer guys, I don't understand. It seems like it's 80% high school, 20% production with these guys. I think it should be the opposite. And 80% production, 20% potential. And the next name on the list, here's a guy with all the production, a lower level, but Marquise Watson-Trent, another guy who was on campus yesterday, a linebacker. I imagine he'll probably be back today. 5'11", 220 pounds. And this is why you can take a Caleb Levely with confidently. If you can get a guy like this, 2024 Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, 120 tackles, 8 tackles for a loss, 1.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, a pass breakup. Dude is just all over the field. Similar to another guy we talked about, Elijah Herring from Memphis, with a similar stat line. This guy, take this for what it's worth, but as soon as I heard anything about him, I followed him and he immediately followed me back. So a lot of times when guys do that, that shows their interest for the school. And a lot of people think he'll end up here. We'll see what happens. He's on campus right now and fits perfectly right into this. I don't have Elijah Herring's stats right in front of me. He's one of those guys they've been after. It's been kind of slow and go with him. I don't have any breaking news on it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see at least two out of three of Caleb Levally, Marquise Watson-Trent, and Elijah Herring coming in here for this class. And there's a chance all 3 of them could be on campus today, but I'm positive the previous 2 definitely have been here the past couple of days.
Georgitis here from the Renegade Report, as he is every Wednesday. We get together to talk Florida State football with all of you every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. But of course, we ran into a holiday the last couple of weeks, and I was on the road during the Christmas holidays. And so here we are on a Thursday, and we hope that you got here on time. If you didn't, no problem. You just go back and you watch what you missed and you check out George's work on the Renegade Report. And again, that's going to be every Tuesday and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and then the Renegade Roast on Mondays. And so we are in the midst, George, unless you've got anything else on the FSU trail of the college football playoffs, so we can dive into that conversation, unless we've got any other loose ends with FSU.
Got a couple more names and kind of a bit of a breaking news. Marcus Watson Trent, who I just mentioned, is going to be at Washington tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. If they can't get him to commit and he takes that visit, maybe they're not as high on him. Maybe they don't land him. We'll see what happens. As we've always talked about in this thing, if they don't commit 24 hours after leaving their visit, it's a fat chance. But I mean, Washington I believe they were 6-6. It's not like Texas Tech, who's spending $1 million, or Georgia or something like that. We'll see how that one goes. Maybe they really love Caleb Lavalley and they're not taking 2 or 3, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. But the other names that I hadn't mentioned yet, Diamante Diggs, 6'5", 260 pounds, 4th-year senior, 34 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 pass breakups. He's supposed to be here today. I haven't seen him confirmed yet on, the pictures coming out, but he's scheduled to be here. So yeah, he's a guy with a ton of production and will be a nice depth piece on that D line. Not somebody that I'm expecting to come in and just take over and start, considering the depth we have on the D line out of Coastal Carolina, but definitely a good piece. And the same thing with Jason Jenkins out of Tennessee at 6'6", 280 pounds. He's a 4th-year junior, 9 tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble. Again, Jen is really plugged in up there in the Tennessee area. He's a guy that coaches on that staff wanted on the field and were superseded by guys who, for whatever reason, didn't deem it necessary to give him as much playing time as he needed. A really high upside guy. If you want to factor that in, I think he would be a great depth piece and could possibly be a 2nd or 3rd defensive tackle behind J.L. Jackson, and just, really stiffen up this line and give a bunch of options for that 3-3-5 defense, as we've seen between James Williams, Deontay McCray, DJJ coming back. It's going to be some beef across that line. A far outcry from last year. A bunch of huge guys over 6'5", 250 to 280, 300 pounds. It's going to be really fun. So he'd be a nice addition. Again, another kind of depth piece there. We talked a ton about Traylon Ray, the West Virginia wide receiver from Tallahassee. 28 receptions, 426 yards, 4 touchdowns. They're still in it for him. Another one that's went quiet, similar to Elijah Herring, is Rochelle Perry, the Central Connecticut offensive tackle, 6'7", 323 pounds. Continue to monitor that one. True Edwards, his father was a Biletnikoff winner. I believe he's another guy from close to Tallahassee, if I'm not mistaken, 6'3", 201 pounds. He had 77 catches for 897 yards and 6 touchdowns out of La Tech. Another one of these guys that's kind of worked his way up and through college football. I think that's about all of them. Well, no, I got one more. One more for the people. There's one more, if I can find. We got a guy out of Sam Houston State, and his name is eluding me. See here. There it is. Chris Murray. 6'4", 255 pounds. He's currently crystal balled to Kentucky. He's an edge. Junior, played in all 13 games last year at Sam Houston State. 35 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Kentucky obviously had a little bit better year than us this year, but I think this is one that Florida State, if they do right, they could definitely get him in with that logo. Yeah, I mean, when you're 2-10, Mark.
4-8, 2-10. Does it really matter?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Screw Kentucky. They don't got nothing on us. But yeah, if they hit this one all out, you get an edge. Like I said, he's a little bit shorter than James Williams, but 6'4", 255. He fits that weak side defensive end for this 3-3-5. And yeah, I mean, 8 to 10 guys going to be on campus here today. It seemed like, and we told our viewers, like, you got to understand this isn't over, because we hit a dead period at Christmas Eve. But this thing opened back up on January 1st to the 5th for the portal guys. High school visits start again on the 6th. Not even going to get into that. We'll start next week. We'll get back into the high school stuff. Maybe, Friday on the show, we'll do a little bit of it. But right now, it's all about the portal. Florida State currently sitting at 7th place in the portal rankings, which coming off the year we had, and given we don't have 30 guys committed like some of these other schools do to get up there, only 10 or 11 guys committed, you're at number 7. You land a couple one of these guys, Florida State's got a legit shot at a top 5 level portal class, which if you'd have told me, a month ago, I'd be like, holy crap, that's knocked it out of the park. Can't believe it. They've done an amazing job at getting elite guys that they had connections to and not burning time and losing out on guys by staying too long on a guy like Lee Hunter. Okay, Lee Hunter's one of the best players in the portal at defensive tackle, but they made their pitch, let him go, and then the guys that they could lock down, they've got the Deuce Robinson of the world, the James Williams of the world, and all of a sudden, especially with the offensive line, you get Micah Pettis from Ole Miss, which is just out of this world guy, Gunnar Hansen. You end up getting Adrian Medley at guard. You basically built your whole entire offensive line outside of one guard position. Another guy that visited again, even though he's already committed, Luke Pettibone, one of the best centers in the country out of Wake Forest, or at least in the portal. They've got something to sell now to these guys. I mean, they can talk to Rasul Faison and say, look, we got 1,500 pounds on this offensive line, 350, 330, 305. So there's a lot of stuff there. And also what Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn can sell. I don't give a dang what you say about we were 2-10, we were this. When you've got 20 years of no matter the circumstances, you've got this top 25 rushing attack and things of that nature. You can sell it. You can see that, hey, even if we don't win or whatever, you're going to get your attempts, you're going to get your yards, and we're going to get you ready for the NFL and play some good offensive line in front of you.
So, George, as soon as you said True Edwards out of Louisiana Tech, well, first of all, he started at Hawaii.
Yep.
And then we see the last 2 seasons at Louisiana Tech and with La Tech last year. Look at that, 84 catches. Good Lord, almost 1,000 yards. You said his dad was a Biletnikoff Award winner?
Yes, sir.
So as soon as I put Edwards together with that, I'm thinking, is this Braylon Edwards' son? That's the first name that came to mind. So
I'm pretty sure. Don't get me to line. I've got so many heads floating around and so many names floating around in my head, but that does sound correct. Yeah. There can't be that many Edwards that have won the Biletnikoff. So
can't be too many. So Braylon Edwards of Michigan fame, Cleveland Browns, NFL. There you go. True Edwards. Very nice. Huge season for the Bulldogs at Louisiana Tech. Okay, we got about 75 to 80 on the line. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, and understand that you can go back and watch what you missed when we are done here today. We got George on the line, of course, from the Renegade Report, and he's live every Tuesday and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and then they got the big Renegade Roast on Monday night.
Absolutely,
right,
guys.
George?
Hit that like and sub right now. I know half of you guys aren't subbed. We got 80 in here. That means we could get 40 subs off of this live. So sorry to cut you off.
George knows the YouTube analytics. He's been a quick learn, and he has brushed up on the YouTube analytics. Absolutely. That is the story. I posted a video on, meaningless bowl games, but Michigan plays Alabama, so I do an instant analysis of it. The last I checked, it was at 19,000 views. And somebody asked me, they said, how many people out of those views are subscribed? And I said, well, it's usually about half, but I checked, it was only 21% subscribed. So
when they go national like that, when you reach outside, it can duck down for sure.
Yeah.
But those are opportunities. And I don't know, I feel kind of used car salesman thing, whatever. I shouldn't. You have to tell people to like and subscribe. And again, the analytics show, if you mention it, it's 6 times more people will do it. I constantly forget. But yeah, it's a big part of it. And if you're not subscribed, do it. And yeah, I imagine that one, everybody from every fan base that doesn't normally watch a channel or whatever was locked in on that one. And I'm sure the national channel has probably been going crazy this bowl season. So we'll see if you can get you probably grab 1,000 before it's all over with. If you're not subscribed to the main Voice of College Football channel, make sure you go do that too as well. And again, we're here every week, and I'm chomping at the bit to get these ESPN narratives. So I'm down. If you're ready for that, for my rant on that, I'll go.
Well, I will say this before you get going on that. To George's point, I saw a study. This was probably right before I left ESPN, when we were getting obviously as a ESPN employee at a certain level, getting certain data and information on promotions and so forth. But I saw where back in the heyday of ESPN, depending on what you consider the heyday to be, but if you're old like me, the 80s, the 90s, in a typical hour of Sports Center, they would only devote about 2 minutes to promoting the rest of their shows, the Monday Night Football game, the this, the that, the NHL game on Friday night, whatever. They would only spend like 2 minutes out of an hour. By 2015 or so, they were spending like 40% of the show. They were spending like 18 minutes out of 60, something like that, 22 minutes, something in that range, on just promoting themselves all the time. Basically, you're watching a third of the time. All you're doing is watching them tell you that First Take's coming up and about all their stuff. So have some patience with us, because to George's point, I'm in the same boat where I'll go for 2 hours and I'm taking calls and talking and I'm just thinking football. And I'm like, I'm not even promoting my own show. So I try to hit it brief, try to hit you for 10 or 15 seconds, let you know what's coming up, what we've got available, not waste your time, because we deliver content. But at the same time, we got to let you know what's going on and let you know that that we are here and growing and building and lock in. All right. Well, the college football playoff, George, and as you can tell, man, this is just the start of my day, and my voice has been shot. And man, I got to make it through this show, the next show, Sugar Bowl post, Gator Bowl post. So we'll do our best. But the college football playoff has pretty much gone as scripted in regards to the favorites, pretty much. But we saw an Arizona State team yesterday that I got to say, from the time they hit the locker room at halftime for the rest of that game, they looked like the better football team. So they showed up. And of course, we had the previous weekend. Everybody seemed to be pretty much, unless I missed something, pretty much on point of just calling the games and just letting the action speak for itself, as opposed to Kirk Herbstreit, Sean McDonough, and others making stupid asinine comments the week before, trying to evaluate these conferences based on one team going out there not playing a great game. So what are your thoughts about the CFP at this point?
It has been beautiful, and I mean beautiful, to see the entire college football world, outside of maybe some extreme SEC homers, kind of rally around and against Kirk Herbstreit. I think FSU's outrage and kind of everything we pointed out about the money being motivating and trying to really shill for these teams has come to fruition, and it's been beautiful to see. You mentioned it, whatever it was, over a couple of weeks ago, where he's standing there in front of the backdrop of Tennessee just getting obliterated, and sitting there telling us that Indiana literally did not deserve to be there. Did the same thing on College Game Day. Same thing about SMU. And yeah, for that Alabama-Michigan game, for Alabama, the team that he's wanting to get in there, to lose to nobody, as opposed to Indiana beating nobody with their 4 first-rounders. The same team that beat Ohio State, who looks like maybe the favorite to win the whole dang thing now. Oh man, it's been beautiful. The ASU game. We had some fun on the roast last week where I was just absolutely hyping up Cam Scatterboot. He's one of my favorite players in all of college football. And oh my, what a game. You mentioned it. First half, it was all Texas. Hell, I was wondering maybe, oh man, I hate this for the narratives because they're getting their butt whooped. But missing some players in that first half, and kind of the biggest controversy of that game, and it goes right back to all this stuff of money, and who's in control of all these things. A textbook targeting call. There's not a single person who will argue it wasn't targeting. The only argument you get is you don't make it in that spot, which is completely asinine and the craziest thing I've ever heard. If you don't call it in that spot, then you don't call it last week. Because why was ASU down 24-8 to start the game? They're missing their best defensive player at safety for the first half of the game for a targeting, less egregious than that one the week before. Okay. And completely different team. You come out second half, he's making picks. He had a sack. I believe he had a forced fumble. Turns out whole game around, Cam Scatterboot gets going, but they don't get the targeting call because it's, it would have ended the game. That would have ended the game for ASU. Like it would have been, I think the win probability would have went up to like 98% if they get that first down there with like whatever, 2 minutes left, a minute and a half to go. Disgusting. They reviewed it. You'll never convince me a call wasn't made or a decision wasn't made that we're not going to take away this SEC team's, chance to win this game with this call right now, because it's damnable. Like, not a single person. The only people that thought that maybe it shouldn't have been called were the people that thought it was still 2012 and it was that you had to launch and drop your head from the crown of the helmet, which when you look at another angle, you see it truly was the crown of his helmet. It actually was the crown of his helmet. First thing he made contact was with the face, with the upward launch, in the process of a catch. It was every single thing in the rule. And if you don't know, guys, the new college football rule is any contact. You could flick them with your middle finger in the helmet. Any forcible contact, hand, shoulder. We've seen crazy targeting calls this year. That's just crazy. A guy just going in for a regular tackle and the wide receiver ducks his head down. This wide receiver didn't duck his head down anything. He stood up tall. The most just preposterous call that I've ever seen in college football. But ASU still had a chance to win it, and I saw them make the most preposterous defensive call on that final overtime, where they had them 4th and 13, and then they rushed 8 or 9 guys. That was nuts. I had no idea what they were doing there. That was really crazy. I guess, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. But in that situation, I'm dropping 8 and putting them all on the goal line. Like, even if they got a first down, they would still had to, score a touchdown against you. So you hate it for ASU, but they left it all out on the field. And that was for a team that shouldn't have been there. And it's a disgrace. They got a first round bye and all the things. Man, did they look great. And that was a fun game to watch. Narratives thoroughly have collapsed, in my opinion. What's the other game here that we had that I'm missing there, Mark?
Well, we had this week, we just had Ohio State, Oregon, and of course the Georgia Notre Dame game delayed. And we've got the Penn State Boise State game was the New Year's Eve game.
Yeah, well, I mean, by their same logic, blowout, this and that. I guess Oregon didn't deserve to be in, even though they were the number 1 seed, because they got whooped worse than anybody has yet. Maybe Tennessee's the only one next to it. And, we've found out that you play the games for a reason. You can sit here and subjectively think who's the best and this and that. But it turns out it's hard to win 11 games in any conference in college football. And if you win your conference championship, you deserve a shot. Even Boise State, they get a little bit of heck, but hey, if they'd have had a little bit more success in the red zone, that game would have came down to the wire. And that's a G5. So I'm not going to argue that G5, like when Cincinnati made it, it is a bit different there. With the portal, I think it's clear there's more parity than ever before in college football. And, the idea of selling that it's a bigger gap than ever before, I think is false. You got top-heavy conferences. Maybe the SEC has 2 or 3 really elite teams this year. Maybe the Big Ten has 4, but that doesn't mean there isn't going to be 1 or 2 in the Big 12, 1 or 2 in the ACC, and maybe a G5 team that compete. Looking back, BYU, maybe a little bit better than everybody thought. When they started out the year hot and, lost a couple games, they lost some mustard. But, I think this is the best playoff to date, if I'm being honest. I've been really excited with it. And even the bowl games, there have been some great bowl games. College football, it's the kind of devaluing of the regular season and the bowl season, all that stuff, I think, has been greatly over-exaggerated. I think what we're finding out now, that's a byproduct of this crazy kind of portal and recruiting schedule and how all this stuff works, is that you had better go out there and perform in that bowl game for the momentum to be able to get these recruits. I mean, it's huge. If you go out there and show out in your bowl game, that's huge for transfers, for retainment, all that stuff. So the more money, the more eyeballs, it's not going away anywhere anytime fast. I just hope you don't get the knee-jerk reaction like we've had here the past 5 years, where it's like anytime they don't get the result they want off of an objective measure, they change the rule. So now they're wanting to do away with the auto bids and all these things. I'm fine with doing away with the auto buys, but I don't think the auto bids need to go anywhere. And, it is what it is. If they had it their way, Oregon would have been the national championship, and, obviously keep picking these teams. And one more thing on Kirk Herbstreit, because I can't let him off the hook. I know you've got a lot going on and we don't need to stay here all day, but Kirk Herbstreit, and this is how it's absolute shillism, and you come from that world, you understand it at ESPN, the motives. It's like Pfizer sponsoring every news channel so they don't take criticism. The guy went on there and said all that about Indiana, all that about SMU, all that about Clemson, about, oh, you got to have ranked wins and wins don't really matter, but losses, da-da-da-da. And then he goes out and picks Colorado and Miami over ISU and BYU, who BYU and ISU both had multiple ranked wins. Colorado and Miami had none. It's like, he even picked Michigan over Bama after he made a case for him to get it. It's like, so he knows he's full of it. He knows 100% he's full of it. But yet he still goes on there and preaches all that crap and won't secede. He won't get up there and say, man, I was wrong. I got beat up. Nope. They go on there and he just totally ignores it and goes on to the next narrative. It's really disgusting. I think it's a shame. I can't stand that guy. He's really bad for college football. He's like, I don't know who to compare him to. Justin Trudeau is who he reminds me of.
Wow. There's one of my least favorite people in the world.
Yeah, I think a lot of people.
Yeah, I could take this in so many directions, but it's kind of difficult for me to utter anything at this point. So I'm going to kind of back off and just let that go. And I would agree with the great majority of what you said. I would push back on some other points, but again,
oh yeah, we could do it. I know we could go back
3 hours on video. Oh, shoot, I got a lot more than that over the last 2 weeks. I've got 50 hours. So folks, if you want to hear what I had to say, have at it. It's all over the main channel. All right, George, we appreciate you being here, man. Thanks for showing up for us. And everybody, your next stop with George is Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time with the Renegade Report. And remember that if you can't make the live show, obviously you can watch it later. But it's fun to make the live show and interact with the chat. And again, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. My next stop is just here in about 10 minutes or so. We got a transfer portal update with Leanne Herring. And also we're going to look at Ole Miss's Gator Bowl prospects. But like you, I have been happily I've been happy about the bowl season in regards to, even though, and the one thing I will say is that depending on the fan base and what their team's doing during the bowl season, that's when the games either count or they don't count.
Oh yeah.
So that's everybody's got it in a position where they can take the bowl games in whatever direction they want, because they can either say we had a bunch of opt-outs and it didn't matter, or they can, shove it in their rival's face because we won a bowl game and you didn't, and you guys looked horrible, because suddenly they matter. So, but in terms of watching the games, seeing the play on the field, and most of these games have been legitimate in regards to most of the players being there. And, all you had to do was watch South Carolina and Illinois go at it for 3 hours. That was a great game, and they cared, and they were that stadium, even watching on TV, felt like, man, it was a, semifinal game in the college football playoff.
Another one for the narrative. There wasn't no chirping for Illinois to get in, was there, at 9-3?
They had the same record.
So Alabama, we just not to hate on your friend from Ole Miss, Duke. It's going to be a tough one for Duke to go out there and match up and beat them. I don't know if Malik Murphy's playing or not, but if you could get the sweep on all 3 SEC teams that Kirk was up there lobbying for, it'd be beautiful for me to see. So we're pulling for Duke for the one time ever, and shout out big game James Coleman. He's over there at the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, a representative of the bowl. So yeah, he asked Lane Kiffin, and you don't get any access like this. He just put out on Twitter, what questions y'all want me to ask? And I said, ask him about those tweets, man. How does he feel about all those tweets lobbying for these 9-3 SEC teams? And Lane just laughed, and he was like, look, man, yeah, that's my fault. I tweet like a fan. I probably should tweet like a head coach, but yeah, it's all in fun and games. So yeah. Respect to Lane. He's a lot of fun to watch. And unlike some of these other guys, like he does kind of take his medicine, and he'll make jokes at itself instead of just pretending like nothing ever happened and keep pushing the same exact narrative.
For sure. He did go silent after Tennessee started to get their asses kicked against Ohio State. Yeah, he went from the tweet king to dead silence. But yeah, it is refreshing, and he's done that in the past to say, hey, yeah, I was an idiot. That's what it was. All right, George, appreciate you being here, man. And everybody, we'll be back on schedule next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on Florida State Live.